Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to call on Chaplain Deb Forstner from Lake Region Healthcare to lead us in our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Tonight's invocation are the words of the prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, harmony. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Dear God, we ask for special graces that your peace and wisdom be with our city leaders tonight and always. Grant them the gifts of open and compassionate listening. Let them and all who are present here be instruments of peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's 5:30, February 20th, 2018, and I'll call this meeting of the Fergus Falls City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
Here.
The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I'll ask our city administrator, Andrew Bremseth, if there's any additions or corrections to the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, members of the council, good evening. There are a couple things to note. Under open forum, we'll add a third speaker. We had a third open forum request in advance of the meeting from Mr. Chris Schulke regarding the Regional Treatment Center. So there'll be 3 speakers on the open forum. And then under consent agenda, item number 7, we need to add a few appointments, including Guy Olson to the Airport Board, Nancy Sanchez, Deborah Zachman, Michelle Anderson, Amanda Whitney, and Katie Schroeder to the Human Rights Commission. And I can repeat those if anybody needs, but we'll try to encapsulate all of that under consent agenda item number 7.
All right. With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Anthony.
I'll go second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. There are no public hearings this evening. There are no bids to award. And they're under petitions and communications. We'll move to the open forum. Tonight, as Andrew mentioned, we have 3 requests. First, I would call on Ben Harry Hansen. He is speaking to us regarding downtown parking lots and the farmers market. Thank you for being here, Ben.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councilmen and women, and to everyone here listening. My name is Ben Harry Hansen. I'd like you all to imagine my following idea. First of all, I would tear down the old flour mill. Second, there's a cement slab that's approximately 75 yards by 15 yards. We could use that cement slab that's already there to be used for the farmer's market, where I believe the last session you were speaking about putting, or trying to put it in that parking lot on Union and Lincoln, And with this being used for the farmer's market, to keep them out of the weather, I request the city, to build kind of a shelter, with a roof, open sides. If it's windy or raining at a certain slant, the people at the farmer's market that are selling their crops, they could put tarps up on the sides and take them down afterwards. And the shelter, could be used for different activities as well. Examples are, Summerfest activities, graduate parties, picnics, and get-togethers, so they're all closer to the downtown area. 3 would be my request, to grade the riverbank, that's there, so it's not so steep. Remove some of the trees, so it can be more used for fishing. Taking senior pics, with the wooden train bridge in the back. And also, to put another dock with a kayak, in and out, so people can go on down the other side of the river, escaping the dam and rapids that are going under the bridges. Basically, just to make the area into a park is what I'm requesting. And with some of the space, which service food employees already use as a parking lot, take use of that, and asphalt, a certain percentage, of that area, for a parking lot, for people as well that are, there, to do stuff with the park and everything else. Possibly put a curb, alongside that for the, the businesses that are already there and, which they could use for, parking as well. And lastly, I'd like to request like a walk bridge built over the river, to make the river walk more accessible from the park itself. Since the river walk is, right there, it'll be the start of the river walk for them walking to the Veterans Park area. Mr. Mayor and fellow council and women, that's what I have for tonight.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Next on the open forum is Mr. Carl Zachman regarding river development and RTC demolition. Thank you for being here, Carl.
Hello, my name is Carl Zachman. I live at 941 North Rosemary. I feel that Fergus Falls, I wrote down my thoughts because I didn't want to ramble, so bear with me with page changes here. Fergus Falls has many resources and assets, and the two largest being of the Kirkbride and the city's river. First, I'll address the elephant in the room, which is the Kirkbride. My concerns with the Kirkbride that I don't hear people on the city council or anybody in the city talking about. Things like, why is so little of it projected to be saved? Why is, when development is talked about it, why is it kind of all or nothing? We save the tower building or all of it? Like, there is more to that major building than that. And then, my other concerns are what are going to happen to the site afterwards? Is it going to be deconstructed just so that apartments can be built? Because that seems kind of a waste when there's already a building there that could be apartments. Will it become an empty lot that it become a blight on the city like the Pontiac State Hospital did? And what about projected cost overruns? Greystone was projected to be around 12 to 14 million, and it came in at $34 million for deconstruction. Why is no one talking about salvage? The one attempt that has been made to salvage things were shot down because of liability, when other cities, municipalities, and areas have had to do it with buildings that were in much worse shape and much more risk. Why is there no talk about building materials being used to fix other parts of the Kirkbride? If West Detach is to come down, why is that not being talked about, having materials set aside like bricks, stone, and doors to fix the tower building? That's attached to the building too. When that comes down, there are going to be holes on the back side. One cannot just go to the brickyard and get 150-year-old Pelican Rapids made brick. I know when the Fergus Falls High School was taken down, where Ben Franklin and Goodyear is, that building was deconstructed. I know of a house on Swan Lake that was made entirely out of brick from the high school and the metal roof trusses, among other things. By denying salvaging, the city is looking to offset potential income from selling those resources. If nothing else, it eliminates landfill waste, demolition volume, and cost for transport. Not to mention, while we have this discussion, the city's lack of allowing tours that could bring money to the community. I know that liability is brought up as an argument, but there is liability in everything the city owns. All of its buildings, from drownings at a city park or pool to the city's abandoned sewage treatment plant that's been abandoned for over 20 years that nobody even monitors. The argument I hear for talking about demolition and deconstruction now is, we tried. Well, that's a pathetic argument. It doesn't work when you learn to ride a bike. It doesn't work when you learn to walk. You either do or you don't. I tried doesn't work. You do it until you succeed, no matter how long it takes. All of these needs need to be addressed before deconstruction should even happen. Asking questions later is not really an option. The city of Fergus Falls and its residents deserve to know what's going to happen in every step of the process and afterwards. This brings me to another concern, which is the river development. For as long as I can remember, and anybody that I've talked to who has resided in Fergus Falls has been a one major issue at a time city. Police station, new library, expanding the new library, new sewage treatment plant, ice arena, the Kirkbride, school athletic field, remodeling downtown, a new bridge. It's always one issue after another. Fergus has come to a point where we need to do multiple issues. While talk of the Kirkbride has taken front and center again, talk of the river development has slowed. City improvements like parks, farmers markets, trails, riverfront development, water recreation make a city a better place to live for its residents and its tourists. The city and its councilmen have a unique position to not only succeed or mess up one project, but two projects. And at a time when everyone knows that the tax base of Hoot Lake and its power and Otter Tail Power is running out, why is the city looking to get money from the state for deconstruction and ignoring the money the state is offering to help develop our riverfront, our trails, and our city? With my master's degree in anthropology and historical archaeology, I have studied what makes a city thrive and die. And as an artist, I have traveled all over this great country and seen what works. And I've seen countless cities and towns across this country and the Midwest that are dead and dying. Please don't let your short-sightedness make Fergus Falls a place where people wish they lived elsewhere, but instead make it a place to be proud of, a place where people choose to live, choose to work, choose to visit. The choices that are facing the city and the city councilmen will, in effect, determine the fate of the city and these very aspects that we all hold dear.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. And third open forum is Mr. Chris Schulke. Thank you, Chris, for being here.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So, by now you might be wondering, don't these people ever give up? Well, in relation to the state hospital, strictly speaking for myself, of course, the answer is no. And I just want to give you part of the reason. And I'll be brief. So since the state vacated the state hospital, a debate has raged over what should be done. It can be basically divided into two sides. Those who view the complex as an albatross, a weight on the back of the city that needs to be removed. And the other side are those who see the hospital as a one-of-its-kind resource that must and should be saved for the benefit of the community. Now, when I look at the state hospital, I not only see a historic building, but I also see the future. Now, for years, I have been preaching the benefits of historic preservation in our community, and I am more than pleased and happy to see the city seeking to revitalize the downtown. But it would not be happening if we had not retained an infrastructure of historic buildings. Imagine how downtown would look if in the early 1990s the city had gone ahead and demolished the Cadets Hotel as they wanted to do. I mean, it took some 25 years by the time the Cadets was empty until a developer was found, and now it's one of the gems in our community. So yes, our downtown and riverfront is a jewel, but we have an even bigger one with the state hospital. So for over 10 years, the debate over the fate of this facility has divided the community, and the narrative has been fueled by mistrust, enmity, and fear. For the sake of Fergus Falls, we cannot afford further division. So, as the city pursues state bonding dollars, I'm calling for you, Mayor and City Council, to reinstate the RTC Mayor's Advisory Council, which was prematurely discontinued some months ago. It is my hope that the city will allow this community-driven advisory council to provide a sincere, transparent voice on what is to become of the state hospital complex. So that's my recommendation, is to reinstate the RTC Mayor's Advisory Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And again, thank you all for being here. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. There's a copy in your packet. There's also a copy on the board. If anyone on the council would like any of the items removed to discuss individually, we can do that. If not, I would entertain a resolution approving the consent agenda.
Offer, Your Honor.
Seconded Justin, seconded by Brent. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. Under ordinance and resolutions, item number 1 is stormwater management and Lake Alice discussion. And I know that our city engineer is going to discuss this, and I believe Mr. Burtwick probably has something to say.
Yes, thank you and good evening, Your Honor, and members of the council. Just wanted to provide you some background of where we're at with the city's ordinance 3.94, stormwater management, and also response to what Mr. Burton, representing the Lake Alice Neighborhood Group, had presented recently at the last council committee of the whole. If you can recall, back in September 5th, this council accepted a professional services proposal from Whitseth Smith Knowlting in the amount of roughly $13,800. The main objective of this proposal and this request was to review the current city's stormwater policy and how it conforms to current state federal mandates. Currently, right now, this work is in progress. I'm anticipating sometime this spring where that review should be done. Now, in response to discussion and requests from Lake Alice neighborhood reps, I appreciate their group's engagement and willingness to become involved with their watershed. Many of the topics discussed at the last Council Committee of the Whole meeting are closely related to the city stormwater ordinance and mandated per the MS4 program. For example, the specific similarities I'm referring to are MCM 1 and 2 of the MS4 general permit requirements. That's generally numbered 1 through 6. MCM 1 is a component of public education outreach, which includes teaching citizens about better stormwater management. MCM 2, public participation, including citizens in solving stormwater pollution problems. There's a lot of examples out there from a lot of cities. For MCM 1, taken from the city of Duluth, much larger community, but their target audience is schools, rural homeowners, and businesses. That being said, I believe the next course of action moving forward in consideration with Lake Alice Group efforts is, number one, is to have this group work specifically with engineering staff to tailor MCM 1 and 2 outreach efforts specifically directed towards the Lake Alice watershed. As efforts progress, these same efforts models could be expanded and modified for other sub-watersheds within the city. Number two, develop a city filtration policy that provides assistance to bolster voluntary efforts amongst this community. This program may consist of a combination of funding, construction, and/or design, whereas these BMPs, best management practices, could possibly be constructed within the right-of-way where applicable, and in turn request volunteers to do some of the ongoing maintenance that's commonly in occurrence with these types of devices. I'm also working with Interstate Engineering, developing a professional services proposal in regards to identifying some of these sub-watersheds, these specific locations within this watershed. Thirdly, develop next steps for the Lake House watershed infrastructure improvements given the recent DNR denial response for the supplemental water system. Number one might be pursuing the grit chamber that was generally discussed and located at the northwest corner of Lake Alice, where a majority of the stormwater enters into the lake. We have been pursuing this through a Clean Water Partnership grant for approximately 3 years now, but that may be worth revisiting and moving back towards that improvement project. Keep in mind the supplemental water system was upwards of $800,000. I believe last estimates for the grit chambers was on the order of $250,000, $300,000, but we need to update those costs. Another aspect of the Lake Alice BMP policy would be just that, a policy addressing the management of the existing lake and specifically maybe the aquatic management plan as well and detailing this. So at this time, that's what I have in response. I got multiple examples. I don't prefer to go through and everything, but it's a very complex, encompassing program, so.
What's your recommendation to accept the proposal?
Pardon me? We accepted that back in September. That was just an update, what we did do.
Got it.
Still in progress, but it's taking quite a review. That whole review is very comprehensive per our city ordinance as far as where we're at and addressing baseline standards.
Got it. Questions, Anthony?
I think as we have obviously an engaged group in Lake Alice, and that's obviously as a critical water in the city, then I think that that would make a very good pilot area for us to start implementation and part of the SWIP program and the recommendations. So I mean, I think whatever we can do as a city to engage that, and I think ultimately we have to look at the grit chambers as being something that we have to figure out a way that how we're going to fund those to get them in, because one of the issues that the DNR obviously is citing in their report is until we actually stop the grit going into the lake, they're not prepared to really consider any other alternative things, and the grit chambers are key to making that happen, or at least alleviating a large portion of the sand of the grit.
That is, you're absolutely correct. That's one of the components, and it's a matter of if we're still going to apply for a grant. We've tried to modify it over years, doing more upstream enhancements as far as treatment, as we modify the program with the grit chambers itself. But to date, we've been unsuccessful for a cost share.
Any other questions of the council?
Your Honor, question. In light of the work that you've been also sitting in on with
Natural Resource Committee and the Lake Alice Group. Do you recommend any further, do you need any further direction or encouragement from the council as to working on some of the proposals that have been, if I can use the word floating, about that?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
That's a joke.
Oh.
Lake Alice, I mean, it's about, there's a number of things that result in that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, given the MCM 1 and 2, the public outreach component, I don't think, per the city storm watch, and it's already mandated, I think we can easily work with the group and adhere to that policy and bolster it. Moving forward, where it will take more consultant work to identify and implementation as far as programs. And I guess, knowing this type, if we want to pursue more in this direction, I would first like to wait from a deliverable from what Whitsett Smith Knowlton does with audit, or perhaps we could start pursuing components just of the watershed. One of them, well, like I mentioned, working with interstate engineering, is identifying that voluntary program that you commonly see in a lot of watersheds, voluntary infiltration program, identifying it. I anticipate maybe I could finish that proposal and bring that back to this council for approval.
Just to follow up, Your Honor. You mentioned the, the consultants, and that in our meetings, we have also talked with the University of Minnesota stormwater consultants that at this point don't involve a charge. I'm wondering about engaging interstate engineering at this point, which would be a fee, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And so I guess I'm concerned that if we could follow through with the stormwater consultants we were talking to see what their options were, what the options were from their side before we engage another fee, another study of Lake Alice water, of the lakeshed, that perhaps we would save some money. I'm under the impression they want to help us set up some of these parameters, program, the extension, University of Minnesota. So could we wait on that? So, I mean, is that going to delay anything if we wait with the interstate engagement until we've heard from these consultants that we've talked to already?
No, I don't believe so. Referring to Whitsett Smith Knowlton, I'd like to get that audit completed. And in the interim, we can work, it's based on staff availability, with the U of M volunteers, the experts as well. No, I believe that'd be a very beneficial. It could take some time to work through the process and refine it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I believe that could be an option. I can certainly wait on speaking with Interstate.
And I just want to thank Brian, Your Honor, for making the work very understandable. He's worked with our committee. He's been very helpful, and it's just really a good, positive working relationship. So just thanks again for your efforts, sir.
Thank you, Rod. Yes.
One thing probably to add is, I think one of the things that we were looking to try to do with, obviously, an engineering group would be to identify areas where, obviously, rain capture gardens would be, most effective along the kind of the watershed route. And I just wonder whether or not there's, talking to the U of M, whether we could reach out to the U of M and see whether there's an intern that would like a summer project, and see whether that's something that we could look at doing and fund it. Obviously it would be a minimal funding, because I think if we could identify where we could, have those rain gardens, that would give us something to do.
That would tell us a lot about the feasibility too.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Bert, I know you spoke to the committee Wednesday morning. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
It'd be 15 minutes, Bert. That's all right.
Wouldn't expect anything less.
No, just a couple, Brian, it's been really fun working with engineering, I gotta say, fun in a very,
Engineering
creative way.
kind of way.
Engineering way,
A lot of, those guys are numbers guys, I'm telling you. But as far as some of the people parts, the education of everybody, the work to have happened is to not put stuff on the ground, which is so simple, but isn't. And that part, that's my noisy part, I guess, to talk about that, is the education, which is big. It's not a small kind of a thing. It maybe doesn't require a lot of funding, but it requires staff involvement and time and education and communication, and always talking about it. And so maybe real briefly and a little bit softer along that line, about what this is about, it's very fundamental for, I mean, I got some audience here, we normally don't have audience. It's a very fundamental thing that we're talking about. It's the quality of the water that we drink, or other people drink. It's been on the books for 11 years now, and all of a sudden people are taking off on it. And it's good news, because actually in today's newspaper is a farmer that's taking action, which is totally cool, along the same direction. And then there's a couple of things that, along with all that little fluffy stuff that was in that presentation, that are really important. Bringing up again is the leafleting, which is still an issue. And then I want to leave a piece of paper here. And then this is stumping for something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. Also directly involved in this, Natural Resources Committee is going to come up and ask you to do something about native plants in the city, because there's an ordinance against that. And that's a very important part of what we just talked about right now. And so this, I'm asking Linda to give you this as, you guys don't have enough to read it all, I'm sure of that. But actually, I'm offering this because you can browse this and get some really good ideas from Madison, Wisconsin, and it's about native planting.
Excellent.
So, and forward we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bert.
Thanks, Bert.
Next, under ordinances resolution, is item number 2, of resolution initiating public improvement 9767 downtown and riverfront amphitheater improvement project, and PI 9768 downtown riverfront balcony and parking lot east improvement area. And I'll ask our city administrator to kick off this discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Members of the council, based on feedback that we've received over the last 18 months in a very publicly engaged process, and some of the feedback that we've received over the last couple meetings from the city council, including the last city council meeting where we tabled this issue, staff has met over the last couple weeks to talk about really honing in on a scope for this project, one that you guys could look at, digest, and hopefully advance this evening so we could begin talking to design professionals and taking the next step on this. City engineer Brian Navarro is going to cover it in more detail, but on your desk this evening is a nice graphic that Brian will walk us through that really hones in on the area between Union Avenue and Mill Street, focusing on the amphitheater, the river balcony, and some of the overlooks that have been talked about throughout the process. And we're hopeful that tonight we can take that first step and initiating the public improvement projects and bringing back design professional proposals to move this project forward. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to the city engineer.
Thank you, Andrew, and good evening again. The recommendation and the subject before you is in regards to the downtown riverfront plan. This is based on recent concepts and discussions received at the last council meeting. From the previous predecessor that we presented, we modified it into slightly, and in general, we're still maintaining amphitheater and river cross access trail improvement project. And the second component, public improvement 9768, would consist of a river balcony along the Otter Tail River from Union to Mill Street. But it would be also encompass doing some riverbank enhancements and stabilization along it. Now, if I can come forward to these exhibits here for you. Based on some of the discussion we heard, and I'm going to point out two concepts before you right now. There's a concept A and a concept B. This is Washington, Lincoln up north, and the subject area, what we're referring to in regards to this project initiation, would be this river balcony with overlook, transversing through courts, amphitheater, around federal building, and then coming along the southern edge of the parking lots all the way back to Union. The reason I have Union and everything, part of the discussion was come up about how this would relate to projects moving forward, their geometrics for the road. If you flipped between, you have two concepts, and they're relatively the same, except Union Avenue has a little bit of variation between layouts, pending layouts that we could do for Union Avenue. But I'm hoping to have this as an example of what we could do, not in quarter with this project, but it kind of gives you a little bit more comprehension of what could happen and how it would relate to move forward if they want to pursue on Union Avenue. But on the, I did revert back to the Riverfront Master Plan. Components in the Riverfront Master Plan on the river balcony. Yeah, they considered a public promenade that overlooks the river and runs between Union and Mill Street. The master plan in regards to the river views, they were suggesting potential for selective clearing of vegetation to improve the river views, obviously associated with the river balcony. A third aspect during a quick site visit, that the existing banks along this, especially Union to Mill, there was a lot of erosion, some outfalls. The outfalls themselves had some energy dissipation, required a lot of significant maintenance looking at, and that's illustrated in some of the pictures right there. So I would consider riverbank improvements to look at this area too as well. What needs to be done with the stormwater management as far as the existing system, doing some select vegetation removal, and actually enhancing and doing some permanent slope stability. A fourth idea, reason to incorporate the riverbank would be for the general strategy. One time you look at a project, you usually start from bottom up. If we did look at the riverbank or incorporate this in the river balcony, it's much riskier to do it moving forward than it is to having this, it's much easier doing it now and incorporating with the riverbank design than doing it afterwards. So the next step was very similar. It would be initiate Public Improvement 9767, the Downtown Riverfront Amphitheater Improvement Project, and Public Improvement 9768, Downtown Riverfront Balcony and Riverbank Enhancement and Stabilization Project. We'd be looking to secure some professional design agreements for both of these projects. And I do want to note, these will be presented at a later date, but also in consideration from previous meetings with the City Council, we're not looking to do a majority. We believe in the preliminary conceptual phase right now, a lot of this, any parking right now would be isolated to the southernmost portions of the west parking lot and east parking lot. Preliminary information suggests that the existing, for instance, the existing parking on the southern west parking lot is perpendicular, but to fit the river width balcony in there, we may have to convert that to parallel parking and some modifications. But that, we don't believe that would warrant a parking study, but there would be perhaps some realignments or removal of the southernmost parking on the east and west side to facilitate this type of construction.
Thank you, Brian. So, just to reiterate, you're asking us to initiate these two PIs, which is basically assigning a number to them so they can put staff time and any research, and then also to procure a professional services design agreement, which would then be brought back to the council.
Yes.
For approval.
Essentially.
Scope of work.
That is
all those
correct.
things, and public engagement and how we interact with the public through that process.
Yes, part of that, another component of going this was to the council requested engagement with the local downtown business stakeholders and everything. I know we'll be working at that, but from my aspect, procedural steps that we would have to take. Once we get design agreements, we can formalize a budget and funding sources as well as we move forward.
And then one other question I had, I'm sure council has some discussion, but neither of these public improvement projects, or initiating them, or even if we went through with them ultimately, would impact the future development of either of those lots. Is that accurate?
We would look at a design, but we're pretty much consistent, so no, I don't anticipate as you move forward to the north, hence why we're looking to do the riverbank, so we're not going back towards the river. But if we work in a piecemeal, but in an orderly fashion, moving to the north, as funding everything progresses, that would be the way I would recommend approaching it.
Or, and then, or any of the temporary improvements that the council instructed staff to begin looking at this, it wouldn't affect those even, correct?
No, and yes, we are looking into the west parking lot as well, as far as removal of the bollards, and looking to see if we can make some slight modifications to make that a little bit, I guess, space friendly. For some, it actually help our city staff for snow removal as well. So upon that request, we're still working on that, and we believe we can accomplish it this spring, but we're still looking into it.
questions, comments? Rob?
Thank you, Brian, for putting this together. It helps. The expansion helps. My first comment is that after the work session, I think, as we heard, there seemed to be a common agreement that the west parking lot was a good place to prioritize or begin sort of low-hanging fruit, like we don't have to do a lot, taking those out and things. So I'm wondering about the proposal. I'm in favor of the overall picture. I would like to see us do it in 2 phases. I'm just suggesting we look at it, and you've already mentioned that you are working on it. It just isn't in the proposal. But I was wondering about is it possible to divide this into 2 phases and say, we want to start on the west parking lot first and do the improvements necessary to bring the farmer's market there and to change the parking alignment on that lot. And that would be included in the bullet point on the first page under background and key points after the introductory paragraph. It'd be phase 1, and then it would say, begin on the west parking lot, readiness for farmer's market, and river, whatever you have listed here, that we would start on that lot. And that would include the beginning of the study for the walkway, which I think is crucial, and the streetscape or the bump outs, or however you're calling that, to the west, so that whole piece begins, which includes crossing Union. I think that's wonderful, and it's crucial. All I'm asking, I guess, is that would be the first phase, and then that the second phase could begin, or we could take that up after the first phase has been done and used this summer. And so I was suggesting that phase 2 could start in the fall, and that would be taking the east lot and doing those other things that we're looking at there. And I know I think it's part of the big picture, but I would like us to take it in chunks, and I feel after talking to downtown business people that they would like to see how it works, and to take this in steps. So that's why I'm suggesting some slight amendment to this before I feel comfortable, Your Honor, endorsing the whole thing at once.
Thanks, Rod. I certainly don't have a problem. I mean, as we mentioned, the council made the motion directing staff to work on the west lot with temporary improvements. So I have no problem including west lot, but I do have a problem with the phase. I don't want to wait until the fall, and I want to get those things going this summer and see some things happening down there. But through starting the design and starting the discussions, and quite honestly, after 18 months of community involvement in a plan that's involved hundreds of people, I really want to see us at least initiate the project. Let's get some design service agreements, figure out some costs, we have funding sources. I think there's some funding out there. I just really think it's time for us to not hold everything up on some temporary things, which I'm not opposed to at all. But I would just really encourage the council to move forward.
We can initiate this phase and then, or initiate this and then we can phase it later if we have to, but I don't think I think it needs to move forward as it is right now, and then if we need to just change it after we get going, we can change, the council can do that, but I think it needs to, you're running, keep going. I'll offer that resolution to move ahead with it.
I will second.
Second. Any other discussion? And do we, I guess I'll offer this question. Do we want to, we have a motion directing the staff to move forward on the temporary improvements that were discussed last week. Is that correct? So technically, we don't need to include it in this resolution.
That's where
That's not going to hinder the movement, the progress of that.
Yeah, and if I could, Your Honor, these improvements we were talking about, just a scope, the river balcony, the westernmost limit is leading up to Union. We're not requesting to make any modifications in Union at this time. This is just showing how it could relate to future Union improvements.
Any other questions or comments?
Obviously, the north kind of bank and the south bank walk. Obviously, that north bank kind of trail ends obviously a mill. Is there potential access to come up to the road there, up to the street? on mill.
That may be a,
But-
yeah, I believe on the amphitheater until that's established. I think for all practical, we would just, the access would be from court to the amphitheater and not go any beyond until that's developed moving forward.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Hicks.
Yes.
Bamford.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Brazel.
Yes.
Hooper.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Arneson.
Yes.
Strito.
No.
Resolution is approved. Item J, under presentation of claims tonight, we have claims in the amount of $969,285.41. And if we have any questions, I'll direct those to our Finance Director, Bill Sonmore. And if not, I would entertain a resolution.
For that, Your Honor.
Second, Your Honor.
Roll call, please.
Hicks.
Yes.
Bamford.
Yes.
Fish.
Yes.
Brazel.
Yes.
Hooper.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Arneson.
Yes.
Strito.
Yes.
Resolution is approved. There are no reports from administrative officers. And unless anyone else has any other business to come before the council, we will be adjourning to a closed session to discuss real estate negotiations pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D, subdivision 3C. We will be reconvening the meeting. Then we will be going back into closed session to discuss threatened or active litigation. So, and we will not reconvene after that meeting, so that's a lot. But anyway, that's all to say, we're gonna go into closed session, come back out, and then go back into closed session. So you're all more than welcome to wait in the lobby or the hall or outside and come back in when we reconvene. It will be very brief, I would imagine. Anything else to come before the council? If not, we're adjourned.